I'm an adoptive parent with Family Futures, and this is part of a series called Helping Families Heal. And I'm here with Mandy, who's an OT, and I'm going to be asking her some questions. So Mandy, first question, big one. Can you explain in a few sentences what an OT does?
I'll try to. All OTs work with trying to improve the ability of all people of all ages to participate as fully in everyday life, whether they have a physical disability, a learning disability, or mental health problems. What we do quite often looks very different depending on which client group we're working with. But we all have a core training, and what is wonderful about occupational therapy is that we can work with such a very broad range of people and their the issues that they have with everyday living.
Wonderful, thank you. So you work with children here and families here who've adopted and who've had trauma in their background. So what would that look like? Why would somebody need an OT intervention if they've got a child with developmental trauma?
Okay. Well, a lot of children we work with have real difficulties with everyday living activities, so getting dressed, using the toilet, eating, sleeping, playing, not knowing how to play, getting on with their siblings, and a lot of our children find it really hard to settle at school. What we do find with children with developmental trauma is they're much more likely to have sensory integration difficulties, and that's one of the things that the occupational therapists focus their assessment on, to work out are there sensory difficulties which are impacting on their ability to live their life as fully as possible.
That sounds very familiar to me. So one of the parents asked what would be the basics to put in place to support normal development? What sorts of things can we do as parents at home, basically?
Yeah. I mean, that certainly are some basics. Of course, adopted children can often, particularly children that we're working with here at Family Futures are older children and have missed out on play, nurture, safety, or a safe environment, and a caregiver who is responsive and attuned to their needs. So a lot of our children, even if they're 6, 7, 8, really need and love to play. But one of the things is they quite often don't know how to play, and that's where the parent comes in. And you'll say, "Oh, I can't be bothered. I don't, I don't want to do this." But it's often because they don't know how. They haven't got a clue. So we're often talking about think toddler. Looking at play at a much earlier age. I've seen 11-year-olds love peekaboo. I've seen 16-year-olds really love a game of hide and seek, and it wouldn't be me bringing the hide and seek to the room, it will be them wanting to play hide and seek, and that can be really hard for some parents to see. It's really hard. But so I'd say use the playground like on a daily basis. You have got a sensory environment all set up for you. I mean, in London we will have 2 or 3 around the corner. We're very lucky. Not so convenient in the rest of the country. But and I would say routine is really, really important. Like a routine for a new baby.
Right.
A lot of our children have never ever known routine, and the safety, security of the routine, and knowing what's coming next. So meal times, waking up, bedtimes. Just keeping them the same, even in the holidays. We've certainly found, keeping no surprises.
Yes,
it's a really hard one for parents who are really wanting to go to the the Natural History Museum or whatever, and actually the child just wants to just do the usual stuff and feel safe doing really ordinary things, ordinary and boring actually.
I remember when we reclaimed boring as a good word. So. That was a good thing. Now, when we first came here, Mandy, you gave us a sensory diet, which was new to me. And so could you just explain what that is and what the sorts of things that we do? I mean, I could probably name some, but I'll leave that to you.
You probably can. Well, a sensory diet has been developed by a mother and daughter OT team called the Pat and Julia Wilbarger, who've been developing the concept for about 30 years. And the whole point of it is finding the sensory things that help the child remain in within their window of stress tolerance, so keeping their arousal rate within that zone, so that they can function as well as possible. I mean, it's best done with an occupational therapy assessment to identify what the sensory issues are. So, for example, if I had a child who was really dysregulated during the day and very, very sensitive, I probably would be looking at getting some really heavy work in early in the day as possible, doing some pushing, some pulling, some jumping, maybe sort of carrying something quite heavy, I mean not too heavy, but heavy to school, to ground them, do physical exercise, really prioritising the sort of physicality, using the playground before school, being provided with something chewy at breakfast time to really get those jaw muscles going, and sucking a thick smoothie, and keeping that as routine as possible. A sensory diet is it is a series of sensory inputs throughout the day. So you start off in the morning, and then you would provide a sensory diet for school ideally, so that there is time for movement breaks during the day, and then the sensory diet continues until bedtime.
So it's like taking little snacks during the day, of like sense, just to keep you calm. Is that
Some of it is like a little snack, absolutely little snack to keep that arousal level down, and it's really to stop the arousal level, because as we go through the day, we little irritations bother us neurologically. And the thing is, what children with developmental trauma, because the way their stress system is set up, is they don't really get over the irritation. So it builds and it builds and it builds, and we know a lot of our children manage themselves at school, get through school, and then fall apart after school. It's an absolute classic. So each irritation is built up, and then once they're home in their safe place, they fall apart and really struggle with the evenings. Then it impacts on sleep, and so it's about keeping that arousal level down.
It's a very common story. I know you use a kind of traffic light system.
Yes, the alert program.
Because that's quite helpful. We found that very helpful to talk to our daughter about how she's feeling. So if you, do you mind?
Well, we use the concepts from the alert program, but there's also the zones of regulation, which are often used at school, and they're very, very similar. So we use an alert dial here, and we're looking at how the child can identify whether their what we call their sort of engine is running a bit fast, so it could be a bit excitable, but it also can tip into fear and into dysregulation, or whether their engine is running a bit low, which is like sort of feeling a bit bored and under par. And what we're aiming for is that just right feeling when you're in the green zone, and finding those activities, which I know we've done with your daughter, trying to find the things that she really feels just right doing, and helping her identify what it feels like, because that's so difficult for our children to know that actually they're getting excited, or actually they're too slow and they need to do something to raise their arousal level.
It was interesting, we were just talking about tickling before we started filming, and I remember tickling my daughter and they're having lots of fun, and then it just tipped over into something that wasn't fun anymore for her. And I didn't realise, but with this language we could talk about being in the red zone, which is just too much, or green zone, or blue zone is very relaxed and sort of sleepy. And it really, really helps us. So you're a very useful tool. How would we recognise when a child needs some specialist intervention? What sorts of things would we be looking for in a child that needs specialist intervention?
Okay, well there's certainly some red flags, some sensory red flags. And some developmental issues such as walking on tiptoes, W-sitting, when you're sitting with your legs either side, which shows that the child has got poor core muscle development. They might be really over-responsive to, I really hate different types of texture and clothing, and might be. I have known children become violent to like very light touch, to a point of a placement nearly falling apart because of the parents just not realising that it was causing a violent reaction. A child who is always on the move constantly, doesn't feel satiated by normal activity, and a child who's really struggling with dressing. It might not just be the physicality of the dressing, but just doing it, or needing a parent to do it for them. With toileting, we have a lot of children with toileting issues. The child who really struggles to ride a bike and to learn to swim are sort of red flags too. So there's developmental stuff, there's sensory, but actually sensory integration, another word for it is child development. Yeah. So it's it's those kind of issues that would.
We've touched a bit on sensory diet. What sort of equipment would we need at home to do sensory? I remember you put a bag of potatoes in a little buggy for our daughter at one point, so for some heavy work. So I don't think there's very specialist stuff that we need, but what sorts of things can we use at home as parents?
I think keep it basic and keep it cheap. What I was thinking when I was preparing for this is actually my favourite piece of equipment is a gym ball, which I will get this one. Here we go.
Demonstration.
A gym ball. They're about, you can buy them on the internet for about, I don't know, 10, 15 pounds. Okay, so pumping up your gym ball gives loads of heavy proprioceptive input, so that's sensory input to your muscles and your joints. I'm not going to pump it up, but you can see the pumping action. And a lot of children really enjoy that action, and it's one of my go-to when a dysregulated child comes in the room and go, shall we go and pump up the ball?
So if we need a bike wheel,
exactly, absolutely.
Don't think that's too hard for them and it's too much.
You might need a parent to help and do it together. What is great about a ball, we do bottom trampolining, which is just lovely. And you can get your head shot. I'm going to be out of shot, but getting your head down onto the floor, which causes a vagal nerve reflex and triggers the parasympathetic nervous system. So getting upside down. I
remember our daughter bouncing that quite hard on the floor.
It's great. We do ball games, really bouncing hard. That's another heavy work activity. And it's also great to roll over your child's back. So if they're lying flat on the floor, you get deep tactile pressure, which is very regulating, and again triggers that parasympathetic, so that calming part of our nervous system. So rolling, and it's not too intimate. So it's like a massage, but you're not too close, and it's much more acceptable to our children.
When you're doing this, how would you assess whether the child is enjoying it or not? Because some children will be able to tell you, but others may not, and they may think, I need to do this because you want me to.
Well, that's a hard one, actually, with our children. I mean, some people do make it obvious, see if they're moving and eating. I think what you have to look out for, a lot of our children are highly, highly compliant, and that has been a safety survival strategy for them. So keep checking in verbally with them. And
I guess you can use those zones as well. Is this?
Exactly. Is this okay? Is this okay? Is this okay? Not okay? I think certainly for a compliant child, they usually tolerate it maybe for 30 seconds and don't. What I see, say, like rolling a ball over a child's back. I mean, you would tell me exactly what you're doing. You get them really comfortable. It would be a really nice experience, and maybe they'd like to do it over your back. First. And they get quite sleepy, actually, and go. I mean, what is difficult? It is not the be-all and end-all of sensory equipment, because it can be thrown, and for a dysregulated child, it's really hard. So sort of a word of advice really is this whole point of the sensory diet is to get this input in early in the day.
Yeah.
Not when the child is dysregulated.
Right,
It's gone too far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're trying to keep them in the green
Get
zone
that
the whole
sensory
day.
input in early in the day and then frequently throughout the day. This is not a way.
So it's no good sort of at the end of the day when the child's throwing things around saying, come on, let's roll this ball on your back. No, you need to be doing.
I mean, I suggest if the child is very dysregulated at the end of the day, food is always a first port of call, is get the blood sugar regulated and down, and have a safe space that is really cosy and nurture and low challenge, and just have some really nice things in there, something that smells of mum, something that's cuddly, something that's really nice to do, something that's nice to do with their hands, and just keep it really, really cosy, really, really low key and low challenge is it's really important.
I think, do you want to there's just one more question
Yes.
I think parents would like to hear your views on.
Yes.
Is so a lot of children don't have the advantage, or the families don't have the advantage of coming to a multidisciplinary team like this. What kind of documents, what sort of if evidence would parents be wanting to gather if they wanted to apply for an OT assessment? And would that be your first port of call if you're worried about your child? How do you think that works?
It's a hard one because of course every child is individual.
Yes.
And the children are all over the country with different services. I would suggest if your child hasn't had a multidisciplinary assessment, that would be my first port of call. And I certainly, my understanding of some of the private SI clinics, they're now asking for a full multidisciplinary assessment, a holistic assessment, before they then do the sensory assessment.
Right, yeah.
So with our children, they are way more than just sensory issues.
Absolutely. Yes.
And but it really depends on your local service, on your local OT. I think the difficulty is actually accessing any sensory integration, because there are very few clinics. It generally is private. There's a little bit going on in the NHS, a little bit more going on with children who've been assessed with autism. But it's really quite hard. So you're talking about the documents. Certainly activities of daily living will flag an occupational therapy assessment.
Right.
What is going to be hard when there isn't a condition, but the condition is developmental trauma, but it's not recognised fully even in psychiatry. So it's a really hard one. But I would go for multidisciplinary. Put your money in there first, and if you come here, you do get sensory screening from us, and I think probably some of the other adoption agencies, I'm sure.
Cool, that's lovely. Thanks, Mandy. Thank you very much.